welcome to this Evosys webinar on Next Generation Managed Services. My name is Chris Gomez and I'm an Account Director here at Evosys, covering the UK and Ireland region, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Kathy Gallagher, who is the VP of Industry Programs in the United States. Kathy and I focus on helping Oracle Cloud customers get the most out of their investment by using technology and services to enhance the overall experience to ultimately get a greater ROI from their Oracle Cloud applications. We're really happy for you to have joined us today to cover this interesting topic of next generation managed services. What are they and why do you need them? Looking at the list of guests that we have today, there are people from all over the world, which is fantastic to see. And I've no doubt that each of you are at different stages in your Oracle journey. Some of you have not yet bought the solution, whilst others, I understand, have been live for some months now. We hope that each of you get the most out of this session today, but bear with us when we're covering points that may not apply to you based on where you are in your journey. So, by means of an agenda, Kathy and I would like to talk to you about the following. So firstly, we want to spend some time just setting the scene and looking at some of the questions that we set out to answer in this webinar today, and aligning ourselves to the typical journey that we see many of our customers following post their implementation of Oracle Cloud. We'll then move on to talk about continuous improvements, and that section is going to help us answer two of the questions that we've set out to answer today. And then we'll go on to talk about how you can leverage innovations to answer further three questions on our list. So this webinar today is scheduled for approximately 30 to 40 minutes. So let's go ahead and start by setting the scene for us all. So this slide serves as a reminder to the questions that we'd included as part of this webinar that no doubt generated the interest that's made you want to view this recording today. And when we look at these questions, they're pretty much yes/no questions. So if you do answer no to any of these, we want to make sure that you know at the end of this recording you've got a clear view on how you can turn those no's into a yes. So are you meeting and exceeding the return on investment that you actually intended on getting with the cloud technology investment? Are you able to continuously drive your user adoption and increase efficiencies through those best practices that you were looking to set out to benefit from? And are you currently benefiting from a fully automated testing solution? So every quarter when Oracle are releasing those updates, are you automating that testing, or are you still doing that manually? And I guess question 4 does relate to question 3, because automating your testing will naturally give you time to then look at assessing and deploying those innovations. So are you currently doing that? Are you finding that you've got time to assess and deploy those innovations that you get once a quarter? And then looking at your support model, does that allow you to deliver on those KPIs that no doubt you'd set out to achieve as part of the Oracle journey that you've been on? So, Kathy, let me pose a question to you and bring you into this discussion. We often look at the journey taken to replace software in an organization, be it ERP, HCM, or CRM, or all three of them, or any other solution. And at that start of the journey as the procurement phase, where we set out the requirements, detailing our mandatory requirements versus our nice to haves, and then we choose a supplier or a list of suppliers, and we implement the solution before we go live. Is that the end of the journey?
Great question, Chris, but it's not the only question we all have about the journey. Post go live, here are a few more. Gone live, what's next? Is it the end or the beginning, like you said? Managed services, it's only about hardware and software, right? The burden of consistent upgrades. How are we going to handle the testing and how long does it take? Do those nice features ever get implemented? User and adoption and change management. Is everyone bought into the system? So let's go back to your question to me. Is go live the end of the journey? The answer to this question would be no if modern applications were implemented with a set it and forget it mentality, but that would require businesses to stand still, to not grow or change or optimize. But that's not really our reality, is it? In today's world, and particularly with the impacts of our global pandemic, organizations must continuously drive user adoption and efficiencies in the workforce by enhancing their users' experiences and their business processes. The way to do this is through constant technology updates and process automation. All the while, KPIs need to be in place to measure and monitor adoption of new technologies, the value driven from enhanced business processes, and to identify the empowered workforce. These strategic objectives must be identified and employed on day two, post go live, or what you'll see is how on the next slide, without a strategy and the enablers to achieving those objectives, the negative business and user satisfaction outcomes can be devastating to the expected return on the initial technology investments and to the business as a whole. Over to you, Chris. Tell us more about that.
Thanks, Kathy. So, looking at some of the challenges that we see our customers experiencing post go live, it's a new system, users aren't familiar with the solution as before, that the organization doesn't have the internal knowledge that they did from that previous solution. This results in users getting frustrated and it has a negative impact. Adoption rates are impacted, and if users don't know how to use the system or where to get the support they need, and all this ultimately affects the pace at which an organization can modernize with a new system in place, and in turn, the speed at which they can actually achieve the ROI that's been set out to be achieved. And in post go live, we often see what we call the go live dip, and that impacts productivity and performance to a point where you feel it's actually worse using the new system as opposed to that old legacy solution that you had. The good news is that eventually, as knowledge builds up again, the performance does improve. Now, we've overlaid months on the graph that you can see in front of you, but that does vary from company to company. So we don't always see a move into the positive within that first year of go live. Now, it would be easy for me to say, okay, we'll work with Evosys and that go live dip goes away completely. And we could keep you on an exponential performance scale that stays in the positive section of the graph. But if I said that's just not realistic. Business change is always difficult to embed and implement. And with a new solution, as user gets to grips with it, there will always be a dip. However, what we have seen is that with the right level of support and service, organizations can significantly reduce the dip and move back into the positive performance to not only maximize the ROI that can be achieved, but also supporting realizing it a lot quicker. This isn't just achieved by having a help desk to call when you're unsure on how the solution works. It needs support in other key areas. Now, Kathy, can you take us through that typical support model post go live, as well as the importance of aligning a managed service to the ITSM model?
Yes, of course, Chris, I'd be happy to. So now that an organization is live on the software, there needs to be an established structure for handling user and software issues, addressing enhancement and reporting needs, managing continuous innovations, upgrades from Oracle, dealing with MyOracle support on bugs and enhancement requests, and getting to the nice to haves that weren't addressed in the implementation itself. This chart shows you the typical IT service management help desk structure. Level 1 support typically serves to get users unstuck in their functionality understanding, iron out roles and access issues, and to identify errors that need to move to levels 2 and 3. Most organizations handle this support just fine with a well-prepared process to do so. At level 2, usually there are power users from the implementation that have been identified to handle basic incident and problem management And they may also be tasked with other projects intended to enhance the business outcomes, all the while trying to manage help desk needs. Where it gets tricky is when they don't see what's coming next till it arrives, such as users working outside the system because they never really latched on or bought into the changes. Or how about when a new acquisition causes the need to adjust or enhance a solution with little time to respond, all the while being asked to manage quarterly updates from Oracle. These updates need to be examined for fit to use case, then put through some rigor of regression testing, training, and deployment. Who knows, maybe some of those nice to haves can be greatly enhanced by the upgrades from Oracle, but finding adequate time to evaluate can be problematic. Supporting an ERP system is nothing short of a balancing act where you need to focus on driving user empowerment, training, and adoption, along with implementing business process improvements and increasing overall efficiency. Who even has time to get to automation? Not just for testing, but also to streamline and improve productivity and higher value in day-to-day activities. Many organizations realize how vital balancing all this is, so they choose to outsource some of the more difficult tasks to a third party. Some organizations handle level one and some a bit of level two, and then they parse out the rest to a managed services provider, but often it is with a traditional break fix, keep the lights on approach, which means they're left to managing all the changes brought about upgrades or by their business on their own, where they face less than optimal workforce efficiency and adoption. The sacrifices to the overall objectives we spoke of earlier can be huge. So, what's the perfect recipe to have it all? Start by realizing you can have it all. Don't choose just to keep the lights on over driving greater value from the system just to get by. Lay out a clear path that enables your objectives for an empowered workforce with high adoption rates and efficient processes. Enable measurement of process value through KPI driven analytics. Trust me when I say that rarely, and I do mean rarely, does an organization have the resources and bandwidth to do it all. You're not alone in this if this is your situation. So, what choice do you have? On this slide, you will see an approach that takes the typical support model to new levels, wherein there's a structure that enables a traditional support function along with value-based analytics to drive continuous improvement and adoption of new functionality and automation to enable the outcomes the organization seeks. It requires some real heavy lifting to drive out of the applications the empowerment and improvements your business needs. When you place this level of services in the hands of talented engineers who are trained to work with your business, to measure KPIs, and drive high value from your business processes, you free up resources to focus on that next thing the business needs to change and to grow. In this next section, Chris and I will share the Evosys approach to enhancement of your applications through our managed services offerings. There are two very key elements to this. One is our value-based analytics, and the second is our innovations council. Let's take one more look at the key objectives to minimize the dip and maximize value realization, as Chris shared earlier. Don't just keep the lights on, enable the highest levels of business value. Leverage ITIL-based continuous improvement through value-based analytics. Drive efficiency and self-sufficiency in your user communities. Establish KPIs to drive factual-based support and innovation. To get the most out of your business systems, you have to move from reactive to proactive. Don't live in the technical weeds. You'll miss out on driving greater value for your business. Take out the guesswork and expect fact-based KPIs that show the health of your user community and the productivity of your processes. In our managed services model, we bring industry-leading practices with over 340 value-based analytics tools and over 140 established KPIs to get you started on the journey. You can add and revise these to suit your needs. Back to some of our original questions around continuous improvement. Are you meeting and exceeding the ROI you intended with your cloud technology investments, or are you just getting by? Does your current support model allow you to help with delivering on your KPIs? In this next section, Chris and I will share the Evosys approach to enhancement of your applications through our managed services offerings. There are two very key elements to this. One is our value-based analytics, and the second is our innovations council, and we'll tell you more about those in a second. Let's take one more look at the key objectives to minimize the dip and maximize value realization, as Chris shared earlier. Don't just keep the lights on. Enable the highest levels of business value. Leverage ITIL-based continuous improvement through value-based analytics. Drive efficiency and self-efficiency in your user communities. Establish KPIs to drive factual-based support and innovation. To get the most out of your business systems, you have to move from reactive to proactive. Don't live in the technical weeds. You'll miss out on driving greater value for your business. Take out the guesswork and expect fact-based KPIs that show the health of your user community and the productivity of your processes. In our managed services model, we bring industry-leading practices with over 340 value-based analytics tools and over 140 established KPIs to get you started on the journey. You can add and revise these to suit your needs. Here's a small sample of some of the KPIs we bring and the associated analytics. They're broken down into 4 categories. Let's have a look. First is process optimization in areas of GL close cycle time, days payable outstanding, and slow-moving stock. You can see that the KPIs were identified and measured through the value-based analytics on the far right. In system adoption, we look at utilization of the system, data quality, and adoption rates with goals to increase adoption, visibility of reports used, and overall user performance in areas such as data quality. In this example, we analyze information output in payable spend, inventory receipts, procurement spend, and the like, and again through key performance indicators and value-based analytics reporting. And then, of course, KPIs and analytics in audit and compliance are vital to ensure proper SOD and reconciliation of subledgers, account balances, and journals. The key message here is to set your KPIs by no later than day 2 of go live. Again, we have over 140 of them, and measure process value through our value-based analytics tools, where we bring 340 of them to your journey with Evosys. Let's check in now with Chris about our innovations board.
Thanks very much, Kathy. So the innovation board that we offer our customers is underpinned by the value-based analytics solution that Kathy has spoken to us about. And the innovation board provides a 6-step cycle to help with defining, validating, and then executing the business KPIs that an organisation sets out to achieve. The important step is to then monitor performance against these KPIs and test and improve on them. This is a service that we include in our managed service, and we're seeing great returns for our customers. If we take an example of a customer that began their journey with us in 2017, we can see how they are performing against the 4 KPIs that were important to them at the time. Not only do we have to set out what it is that we want to achieve, but also how. So some of it will be down to working together to streamline processes, for example, or even automating them. The constant around all of these KPIs is increasing efficiency and ultimately winning back time. And when we couple that with working with an organisation to remove inefficiencies, it results in less time being spent over time on operational issues and inefficiencies and longer spent on continuous improvement. Once again, here we're using a live example customer, and the streamlining processes and having a more self-sufficient workforce was the ultimate aim for them. So we're now going to move now to looking at leveraging innovations and how they, as part of a managed service, can help with the other 3 questions that we posed earlier. So, are you able to continuously drive user adoption and increase efficiencies through using best practices? Do you benefit from a fully automated testing solution? And do you get that time to assess and deploy those innovations? So let's look at how other technologies can help with not only facilitating the release cycle, but also how you can drive further success from your Oracle applications. We've leveraged the latest technologies and created a series of packages across three distinct areas: robotic process automation, analytics, and chatbot. With RPA, we look at how we can help our customers automate the regression testing that's carried out for each quarterly cycle to save time and provide focus on where it's required. We also look at how we can save time with automating business processes too. From an analytics perspective, our value-based analytics that Kathy spoke about earlier can be overlaid on existing analytics that you may already have in place and provides that rich information on those four key areas that Kathy took us through earlier. What's interesting about analytics is that we can also look at data outputs that our customers need from the system to provide greater visibility. And the other point that we can raise here is that data and analytics shared across the business can lead to much more better outcomes. But data is often siloed into each business unit or department in an organization. And obviously, there is some data that needs to be kept within departments, but have a think about whether having a more holistic view of data across the organization would help you and your colleagues. Perhaps those non-Oracle solutions that you may have running within the business. We talk about how Oracle Analytics Cloud and the wider range of technical solutions can help from a technology perspective to bring the data together, but also how Evosys can help in getting that data into Oracle Analytics, as well as how to get the most out of that data as well. What's this got to do with a managed service? Well, ultimately, it's about utilizing the time that's available through adopting a managed service and benefiting from all those efficiencies we've discussed today to look at how analytics can really drive you forward. And it's probably something that always remains on the back burner through lack of time. And then finally, chatbots or digital assistants. Many of us are used to dealing with these solutions in our personal lives, particularly when we're looking for help with online retailers, for example, all the way through to utility providers. And they can be frustrating, but it's fair to say that they have come a long way in the last few years in providing positive outcomes without the need of waiting endlessly on the phone for a customer service agent, for example, to pick up the phone. And we're seeing more and more how businesses want to use these internally too, or adopt them. And they play a pivotal role in helping to improve system adoption, for example, through an improved user experience, making things easier. They can also reduce departmental overheads around answering customer and internal queries. And whilst HCM seems to be a popular area to deploy them from an internal perspective, they can be used in almost any department and are often seen as as an inexpensive quick win with a great return on investment. So I'm going to hand back over to Kathy now, who's going to spend a bit of time talking to us about how RPA and its use in regression testing can also be used in regression testing as well as business process automation.
Thank you, Chris. So here's the typical roadmap for the upgrade process, which includes system readiness checks, release updates, review of new features, impact analysis of new features, and identification of new functionality to be deployed, hopefully. The process is filled with a lot of documentation, technical steps for staging, and then there's the preparation of test scripts, regression testing, issues resolution, and eventually some setup changes once issues are resolved. Once everything is signed off and the user community is trained and prepared for the changes, they're deployed to production. Does anyone really have the ideal time to do this from end to end, Or do we just do what is needed to get by, such as some regression testing, setup changes, test and deploy? Are we sacrificing improvements and new functionality because of time and resource constraints? Would you agree that automating the entire testing phase would add significant time to the upgrade process, time to really evaluate how the business can benefit from new features and actually deploy them? Let's take a look. In our managed services model, we leverage robotic process automation, or RPA, for the entire regression testing cycle. The scripts and their execution are completely automated. Look how much time you get back to check out improvements brought about by the upgrade. Now you have time to continue to increase your ROI on your Oracle applications by leveraging new features in production. But it doesn't end there. There are two parts to the automation piece. From a regression testing perspective, when we looked at the time savings our managed services customers gained by automating the upgrade from 20C to 20D, we saw a saving of 60% from the previous 20B to 20C, 60% of time saved. We continually build out the test scripts for the standard Oracle processes and have over 400 and still counting pre-built processes. However, we recognize that most organizations have some level of customizations in their processes, so we work with them to build the scripts in readiness for the upgrade. Once they're built, they can be continually used for each upgrade cycle. But like I said, it doesn't end here. The other part is business process automation. This is where larger savings can be realized. It's not just about time. We spoke earlier about how our value-based analytics solution can be used to help identify the business processes that are ideal candidates for automation. Once those processes have been identified, we recommend investing time upfront to standardize or even redesign the process before you automate them. Forrester wrote an interesting paper in May 2020 talking about the importance of RPA in the modern world, and interestingly, how much of a role it will play in the post-pandemic world. They included some golden rules for robotic process automation, and they said that it is vitally important to carry out the standardization process rewrite step, even if it increases the initial costs. This is because ultimately it will lead to a more sustainable automation with improved returns. They also went on to say how important it is to have a well-documented process map. Automation is normally a fragment of a wider process, so you need to ensure that automation factors in dependencies if associated with the wider process. The other interesting point that the report made was that humans still find more improved ways of getting a job done by using different tools or maybe even identifying shortcuts. That's why it's better to look at simplifying and standardizing processes first, if they can be. Here we have some of the benefits to automating processes. One, once you have automated a process, it's available 24/7. So if you have an Excel file with 2,000 journals that you need to enter, this can be run overnight using RPA. Number two, because of this, it makes RPA an efficient tool for getting work done and more of it. Number three, the other benefit is the speed at which things are completed. Not only can processes be carried out 4 to 5 times faster than humans, process automation doesn't have the distractions that we all experience from being interrupted by a phone call or someone popping over to your desk to ask a question. Number four, there are also assurances over the level of accuracy. Give a robot a task and it will deliver it consistently and accurately. And number five, then the final point is focus. Many processes that are automated revolve around data entry. If we take these processes away from employees, it allows them to focus on the value add and activities, increasing employee engagement as a result. Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks very much, Kathy. So looking at the benefits of a digital assistant, the four main benefits of the use of a digital assistant is summarised on the screen. But all in all, We know that the use of digital assistant underpins the success of improving system adoption. It improves the overall experience of interacting with a system, normally by simplifying that process. And when coupled with RPA, that we've already heard Kathy talk about, it can go a long way to automating some of the repetitive tasks that users often have to perform. Given how inexpensive they are to create and integrate with existing solutions, they are a big win for many organizations. And here are some examples of applications that in turn have processes that digital assistants can help, along with the familiar social channels that are used across businesses by users. Some of them, such as WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger, are also used on more outside of work and are channels that are very familiar with the employees that are using them. So latching onto some of these types of platforms that employees are confidently using can really help benefits with system adoption. And then finally, to summarize and expand on the areas that Evosys cover that can be included in a managed service. It's really important to build a service that is fit for each organization. So whether it's digital assistance, automating processes that extends the use of AI and machine learning, or whether it's getting more from the data that exists within an organization. The use of this type of technology is pivotal in the role of moving a managed service from being ticket focused to providing and giving organizations that vital time needed to look at ways to innovate, improve, and ultimately deliver on the desired business outcomes. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen to us today. We hope you found this recording useful. For more information, please do visit our website or email us at business@evosysglobal.com. Thank you very much.